till Luke. But 10 minutes would be great on me, just for the record, if we don't have to linger too much on mine. But I started seeing 2 new couples, and one of them is an infidelity case, and it's.
Do you think we're going to be able to cover this in 10 minutes?
It's a specific question.
Okay.
Well, I don't know. It could really open up. That's for sure. Yeah, we can keep going. It's okay. Sometimes I hate just being like stuck in the middle and everyone's kind of. So it's an infidelity case. The husband or the partner cheated for a week-long thing, and he has a very challenging relationship with honesty, and tends to be avoidant and hide little things that then kind of snowballed into bigger things and led to an affair. And he's definitely, she's obviously, brought them into therapy, and he's very willing and like more or less happy to be there. I think he's playing ball, but I do get the impression he's not. There's some detail there's some things that he shared that I don't know if they're totally authentic or not, or if he's sharing partial truths. And I don't want to really get into that space where I'm making that judgment, but it did come up with my supervisor. And can
you elaborate on one particular made you sort of have that experience that it's not authentic? Was it like something nonverbal, or the details, or?
The details. So he said that he was essentially blackmailed into having the affair. That it's a long story, but he ended up connecting with this person, and they started texting. And then the story is that she contacted him. She said, if you don't come out here and stay with me, then I'm going to tell your partner what's going on. And so he went out there and then to try and, I guess, fix whatever was happening, and then it turned into an affair, and stayed there for a week, and told his partner that he was gone for work.
And do you know what happened before that? Like that in his mind and his story, she was like holding over his head, like this was like emotional cheating, or what happened up until then?
Yeah. So they were both working. So they were both out of work. It was kind of it was early, or not early, I guess it was kind of mid-COVID, and they were out of work, and they have a kid together, and then a kid for him from his past marriage, and they didn't have a lot of money, and he was really stressed. So they started doing this video service called Bigo, which I don't really get it, but it's like it's like Twitch. You kind of stream yourself and you talk, but it's like a podcast kind of format, and people show up and watch you just kind of like cook and talk, and it makes me feel really old because I just don't get it. But
it's like a reality show. Your life becomes a reality show, basically.
Yeah, like anybody can make their life a reality show. And so, and then so they both said, and so they both started doing it, and she told me, so like, and part of it, we're trying to get tips, and we started making a lot of money because we were flirting, being very, just trying to get people in. And so, he was doing that, and he had this kind of alter ego persona that he's using a different name. And anyways, he connected with this woman, and then things started kind of getting a little more than just the sort of, I guess, casual flirting that they had both kind of accepted for this line of work. And this whole idea of him being blackmailed, it didn't sound right to me, because he stayed there, he was just and so so there's with an infant. So the couples I've worked with in the past, it was a two-way street, and I'm not saying it isn't, but there's certainly, like, there's one big thing that why they're there, and I don't want each session to feel like we're just piling on him, because I know that's obviously going to make him just more avoidant and make him retreat and not want to be a part of it, and then we won't get anywhere. But my question is, so we've had 2 sessions. The first one was individual, split in half, and then the second session was actually just yesterday, and I kept it pretty light and more focused on just kind of their relational patterns and trying to identify the cycles and the tango, and it was good. But my question is, how, like, do you push on, like, for the story, like for context? In Jonathan's session, you talked about context within the enactments, and I thought that was really interesting. Like, the context doesn't matter because they all know it. It's more to do with, you know, the emotions, the dynamics, the patterns leading up. And so, my question is, do we need to go back to that, and do we need to discuss what happened, or do we just kind of have that understanding and just really focus on the emotions and the dynamic, the loss of trust, the attachment issues that they have?
Good question. Yeah. So the answer, as usual, is it depends. Is it important for her to know whether he's telling the truth or not?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's come up. That's come up, like that the detail itself is important, or that the act itself happened and that he's denying, like, the full accountability of it being, like, you know, like that it was 2 to tango. It wasn't just her, like, putting a gun to my head, basically, is what he's saying, and you're not buying it. Yeah.
And so, you know, I feel similarly to his partner. I feel like, you know, and she kind of had some similar thoughts, like, you know, he says that you know, she forced him and was gonna bury him if he didn't come out here and stay with me, and she didn't say straight up, I need to know the details, I need to know everything that happened. There were some conflicting reports, so she ended up, when it happened, she reached out to that woman and said, like, she got them both on the phone.
How did she find out? How did it come out in the first place?
She saw some text messages. Okay. And she kind of,
So if it wasn't for that, would he have kept kind of the affair going, or however he describes it?
My feeling is he would have. His story is that no, he would just want to get out of there, and he was only there so he could preserve, you know, he talks about, you know, when their money was low, he wouldn't tell her because he didn't want her to stress, you know, and everything is about like trying to protect her from the pain. And so I don't think, based on his history and his traumatic history with his parents and how he's kind of survived and functioned in the world, I don't think there's any way he would have ever revealed that voluntarily.
What about now? So the parents, I think, is in the history of, there's something there around confessing. There's this connotation to confessing that it's going to lead to something worse, right? I think there's something there. And then, but so right now, where is that relationship for him with the other girl, the other woman?
It's long gone. The affair was in April. They have no contact. They're completely off of that service.
So since April 2021, so about like 8 months or so. Mm-hmm. So what's been going on the last 8 months?
His mom died, and that was kind of happening during that period. So I
mean, more like between them, like what's the relationship been like? Since then.
It's been hard. It's been really hard because she just can't trust him, and she just doesn't know if he's being honest. And then she has these constant triggers, like he was having stomach aches when this had all happened, and then so because he's so stressed, and that's what happens when he's stressed. And now every time he gets a stomach ache, she just gets this flood of emotions, and she says there's just like there's so many things, and it's almost daily where it just.
So here's what I would say: there's so much there to follow, right, around, like, experientially, like deductively, bottom up, that there isn't that I think that if you follow it, it will come out one way or the other eventually. If you start at trying to find the truth, I don't think you're going to get anywhere. You're just going to put him against the wall, and then he's just going to stand his ground, and you're wanting to shore him up, right? You're wanting to have him be vulnerable. And probably before that, what you'll need to do is, I think we might have talked about it before, is, and this is way more important, I think, than the quote unquote truth, which is, can he be there for her when she's sharing her pain around what that experience was like for her? Yeah. And if the answer is yes, if she's truly vulnerable around it and he's able to be there, what happens after that is most likely he's going to be able to be honest about it, right? Now, if he's not able to be like remorseful and give her the response that would help with the pain, with help with healing, then I think you're gonna be in a more challenging scenario. But almost no matter what, I would say it's never going to help you to go after the truth in this case, like in a case like this.
Yeah. Okay. I think that makes a lot of sense, because I think, like, if we can slowly kind of build some enactments where he gets that acceptance, he can kind of reveal small things, and he can see that she's there for him, that she's touching him, that she's looking at him, that she still loves him. I think just building up slowly can really, hopefully take us down that path to where there is full transparency in the future. But I think it'll be very slow. Yeah.
That plus, what's in his mind? I'm not saying this is an objective truth, but in his mind, what led in terms of their dynamic and their, like, we'll call it her behavior. Again, this is not blame or anything like that. In his mind, where did it go wrong for him? Like, where did the sort of disconnection over time, in terms of, like, you got a recipe, you've got ingredients within the recipe. There's ingredients from her side that he's perceiving as something, we'll call it. And in reaction to that something, how he knows to cope is to maybe connect with other people emotionally. And then, of course, that can lead to other, cheating. Other than just emotional. Yeah.
Can I ask a question? I guess this is more an EFT in general question, maybe, but in the sense of, like, she's trying, as they do enactments, he becomes more and more comfortable revealing things to a positive reaction. Is the fiction that he was blackmailed into it important to her? Like, is that the reason why she's willing to stay with him, willing to continue trying with the relationship? Or is it fine with her, like, not fine, obviously, but will she still, like, want to work towards the relationship if that fiction is dispelled? Like, does that matter?
First, I would say before, Byron, just before you respond, so the goal of enactments is not about like increasing comfort, like for him, or safety or anything like that. The goal of enactments is to shift the cycle, right? Is to shift it from wherever it is now into whatever their goal is. And generally speaking, the goal is, for a beginning, is de-escalation, right? So from escalation to de-escalation. And then once that's taken care of, then the goal of the enactments tends to be around connection, like bond. So and when there's attachment injury in that second level, that's where we get really high resistance. So I would anticipate, if she's not feeling trust, that's not going to happen. It's not possible, right? So then you end up working through a lot of the stuff. Like, she's never going to trust until he's able to give her the response that is. So part of that remorse that I talk about, it almost I would say, in my experience, it almost requires coming clean. Because how can you really give remorse, like true remorse, to the extent that she's got, like, no shadow of a doubt that he's really there with her, if he's not coming clean? Like, it's not going to be convincing for her, right? We got Jonathan coming in now, so he's going to be able to join the party. Jonathan.
Yeah, that's interesting. like to answer your question though, I think, you know, they have a kid together, and so that's the glue, and that's the priority, is just, you know, preserve this home for our child. I think the truth, I think she's come to grips with the fact that he isn't a very honest person, but if she could, I think it would be nice for her to have that full remorse, that full transparency. I don't think it makes a difference. You know, he said that they had sex twice. The woman said that they had sex 5 times. You know, like, she's getting all these different things, and she knows somebody's lying. And, you know, and he says, well, of course she's lying because she wants, and you know, this poor woman, she's just kind of stuck in this middle, and she wants the truth. But I think that it's more about just building that, just securing that connection and knowing she can trust him again, versus really trying to decide whether she'll leave him for what really happened. Because I think what happened.
Does it change whether it was once or 5 times or 10 times or 6 months or a year? At the end of the day, right? It's like you said, it's the underlying experience. Not even if someone's been cheated on for a whole year, not the cheatee, the hurt person, is in 100 cases are not going to all have the same experience. It completely depends on that individual's experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the outside of what happened. It's all about what happens internally, and that's what we're after.
Betrayal. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then I would just be careful around what you said, just to make sure. You said they're in it for the kids, right? For the child.
Well, like even in the intake, they said, we have a kid together, so we want to make this work.
Yeah, and you know, oftentimes we hear that. The slippery slope there, I would say, is, you know, they're not coming into couples counseling just for the sake of the child, right? Like, it's fine to say that it's for the child, and I'm sure it's part of it. But they're coming to couples counseling, and specifically with you, to do EFT, right? Because they want to actually have that trust again and the deeper connection. Because they can go and do another, let's say, couples counseling model, where they don't have to do as much work, and they can be civil, and they can stay together, and maybe even have them confess and take ownership. But what EFT requires of people is actually to completely transform whatever their attachment system is now, and to move into a completely very foreign way of attachment, or attaching to another person, right? So if they're willing to do the work, that's not for the sake of the child. That's for the sake of their relationship.
Okay, yeah, that's really great. Yeah, now that kind of, you brought up something for me. He's his life has just been filled with attachment injuries. Both parents were drug addicts, and his mom would use him to smuggle. You know, there's just so many things. And this is happening with this other couple I'm seeing now, which is the one partner has a very, very serious history of trauma. And I find it, maybe it's just because like my kind of started in individual counseling, to kind of wanted to sit on that for a bit and process what that means for them, and how do you strike that balance where you are going through their attachment injuries, you're going through some of their personal traumas and histories, and how that relates to the relationship, without getting too lost down that rabbit hole? Because I know in EFT you're not supposed, you're focused on the relationship, but these are very key components to how that relationship has kind of molded in its way.
Yeah, so that I would say is not content. That is part of the process, right? So first I would say, for the couple we're talking about first, with him and the smuggling, right? Just that strikes up this like image for me of like, of course, this all makes sense. Why you can't be honest. Like, what does a child growing up in that environment has to learn? And what experiences do they have that make it so that if they are to confess or be accountable, like what was their reality if they were to do that? Probably not a very good reinforcing response if they were ever to do that. So they've never maybe experienced a positive response to taking accountability.
Mhm.
So how can we ask them to do that, right? Like as a first step, it's way too much, way ahead of what they're capable of, right? But ultimately, of course, they will need to get there, or in order for her to fully trust, he will need to get there. But that also requires like this facilitative power between you and her in response to little steps, call them exposure therapy steps of risking. There's a lot of thin slices, as we put it, in between where he's at and what full transparency looks like. Okay. And so on that path, you want to have reinforcements essentially from her, right? Maybe with your guidance, but where he doesn't experience what he's expecting to experience, which is what he used to experience growing up. And yeah, that's going to be a sensitivity to hear some kind of negative response in response to his risk taking, which for him is, we're talking about accountability. So then to your other question about past trauma and the balance you strike. So first thing that comes to mind is, oh, Luke lost audio. Okay. First thing that comes to mind is, how does it show up in between the two of you?
Okay.
Because again, bottom up, you may not know right away. It's more the way you're going to end up connecting it most of the time is you're not fishing for it. What you're doing is it makes sense after someone takes a risk. So they go, you see some kind of behavior, you don't yet know the origins of why they cope in this way. But as you kind of dig through their primary experience, underneath like the sensitivity to the other person's behavior that like stirs up this experience in them, that then that goes through their body and they're reacting in some secondary indirect way. And then you go underneath it, and now you're experiencing some kind of very deep, painful emotion, maybe resistance around even allowing you to see it. And when you just check in, like, hey, is this familiar? And they go, yeah. Okay. Where does this take you back? Whatever you're experiencing right now. And they go, yeah, I was 5, I was 10, my mom did this, my dad did this. Then you go, oh, of course it makes sense. Then you're like, okay, now I get it. And not only do you get it, she gets to get it as well, because she's right there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then both you and her are able to have like a very different lens and compassion to be able to see him through. In this case, we're talking about him. But even in your other couple, right? It's like trauma shows up. Like it's not just stored in some box.
Yeah, well, I call it like the counseling math. It's like you kind of do the math when when something like that happens, an affair. It's like, okay, well, like where do we do the math, and what led up to that, and then everything just kind of all of a sudden just fits into place. But then there's also this, I guess there's this line I find I walk where you try and increase. You try and increase understanding of history and trauma without excusing the behavior. And I found myself kind of in my first session with him, I was hearing a lot about this stuff, and I was commiserating, saying, these patterns are coming up in your life and in your relationship, and it's what you've learned early on, and how to survive and how to cope and how to make it. And it sounds like you had a horrible time doing that, and it was learned behavior. But yeah, sometimes
I'm going to cut you off here. What's the model called?
Yeah, EFT. So emotionally focused.
So if you're looking at the pattern, and then it won't make sense. If you hit an emotion and then you ask about its origins, then both you and the other partner are seeing it through the authentic in the moment response that's occurring, that's coming to the surface, then you can talk about the past without it being an excuse. Because it starts with them being shored up, like that primary experience is there. And then you can ask, where do you remember experiencing this? And then where did you learn to cope in this way? And then it makes sense from the bottom up, from their primary experience. And then you see it on their face that this isn't something that they're coming up with as some kind of excuse, right? This is like they're really in their experience.
Yeah.
So when we focus on the emotion, then it's much easier to believe and put the pieces together. But if we're talking about just some random behavior and some pattern and go, well, you know, give me a reason where this started, it's not the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Thanks. That I feel like I just got schooled. It was great.
I figured that would be a good cutoff there.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, I think that was really helpful. I like it. It's early on, and but it's good. Everything seems to be going pretty well, and the alliance is growing, and yeah. So thanks for everyone's help.
And I'm sure we could talk for a lot more than. What was it? It's been 25 minutes or so. We talked about that. So
classic.
Yeah, let's go, Luke. You're up. But yeah, just kind of like what we talked about with Jordan is, you know, something can be really simple. Like you can read the 9 steps, 3 stages. I get them, point A to point B. It's really simple. But what you don't factor for is the variables of like what they bring to the table, the intensity, the strong coping, the resistance, all the things in the moment that come up that could be, as you know, we talked about with Jonathan yesterday, like these things can trigger us. It's like right in our face. Like, where do the steps go then?
Oh, yeah, it's been an interesting experience having these new clients, because it's just so much more pleasant than my first couple was so hard. Just managing the room was like, okay, you know, and everyone's getting cut off, and it's just it was just diving in, and it's definitely giving me a little more I think just toughness kind of going into these very agreeable people who seem that they genuinely want to work on this, versus like, you know, you're kind of just doing a lot of management.
Affairs are easy after that, apparently.
Yeah.
But everyone's got their sensitivities, right? Like for you, maybe a fighting couple isn't, or for someone else, it wouldn't be that as difficult as it was for you. And then for someone else, like, oh my God, if I had to deal with an affair, that'd be the hardest thing ever. Right? Like, who's to say? It's all relative.
Yeah, I'm scared of everything, so I let all the fears come in, and
you know what? You took on a couple like really early, so you're definitely like living the no fear counseling motto.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's good.
And that's not, when I say no fear counseling motto, I don't mean not to have fear. I mean to feel fear and then do it anyways, just in case, just to clarify for anyone that doesn't know.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, well, I'm excited for the externship next week. That's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I'm excited. Maybe you'll be in my group. It'll be like a big group, like 60, 70 people. So.
Oh, wow.
And we got, I think, like 10, 11 volunteers, me being one of them. So good group.
Nice.
Yeah.
Great. Cool.
Yeah. All right, Luke.